Lodge. Cold Hollow Cider Mill. This was an awesome stop. Loved it. It was opened first in 1974. Best apple cider I've ever had. Also awesome donuts. Cold Hollow Cider Press. Apple cider donut. Yes, we're cheating.
Big time.
This is a cool little place. If you're in the area, you should definitely stop. It's amazing all the different things we've been able to see this trip. Growing up, I couldn't tell you how many times I've seen The Sound of Music. So knowing that we were going to be in the Stowe area and the Von Trapp family that the movie's based on actually lived here, we decided to swing by. So this is the Von Trapp Family Lodge. They first started inviting people up to their home in 1950. At that time they had a 27-room family home. In 1980, that lodge unfortunately burnt to the ground, and they replaced it with a new 96-room Alpine Lodge. Added on to it a time or two since then. But the actual Von Trapp family that the movie is based on lived here, worked the farm, and the family still owns and operates the lodge. And this was kind of a neat little thing to find in the woods behind the lodge. It was a small chapel that was built by the family back here. They had a Catholic priest that was also kind of a teacher for them and music director, and he would do services up here from time to time as well. Beautiful country. This was not one of our original planned stops, but it was a lot of fun. This is a church across the street from the old store that I just thought was really neat, so filmed it. The store has records that they can show they've been in business since 1781. And it's a cool old building. A lot of neat old artifacts in it. Said there was a museum as well, but we didn't find too much museum stuff inside, other than the store itself seems to be a museum. What I thought was kind of cool about the candy aisle here is that when we were kids at the Ace Hardware, they'd have jars full of those candy sticks. It was kind of neat to see them again. The covered bridge was neat. I love the old architecture and all the old wood beams. I'd say the only thing with this one that was a little odd was they had removed it from over the river. The river's actually behind it, so it's actually sitting in a field, which was a little different. But still really neat architecture. Love the old beams inside. Amazing what they could build out of wood that could withstand as much weight as it could. Made it to Maine. Kind of crazy. That was the first view of the Atlantic Ocean we've had on our trip. I have a feeling we're going to see it several more times before we're done.
We are at the Red Barn Bakery, Maine. This is cool.
The Red Barn was a neat little store. Recommended when we watched Keep Your Daydream. What I found interesting was the barn was built in 1840. I think I spent more time looking at the beams and the construction method of the barn than I was all the things that were inside. And that house was just moved there recently. The owners are thinking about possibly turning it into like an Airbnb. And that house was built in 1816. Nice little visit. And the macaroons were delicious. One more little tidbit on the Red Barn. It's in Lincolnville, Maine, which, according to our ancestry for you Knights out there, my great-great-great-grandfather George Westbrook Knight was born in Lincolnville, Maine, the 5th of August, 1787. Then we went on to Fort Knox. This is not the Fort Knox with all the gold, but it is named after the same general, Major General Henry Knox. The interesting part about this fort is even prior to 1844 they had been discussing building this fort because it's on the Penobscot River, which was a key point back in the day. The British came and invaded this area back in both the Revolutionary War and the War of 1812. So as America was forming, they decided they needed some forts along this area to help protect the river and its access. Well, in 1844, they decided to start building this fort. For some reason, this fort never really got the attention or the purse strings for good, solid work on it. While we were there, one of the interesting facts is one of the new commanders that came in noticed that they did not have any artillery for the fort itself. So it sounds like this fort was always in a constant battle for funding, supplies, materials, and even though it looks so complete, it was never actually finished. And it was the late 1860s when they finally decided that they didn't really need this fort anymore because its needs were outdated. And the Civil War had passed. So the fort was never actually finished. The barracks and the living quarters were never completed. and there were never soldiers stationed in the fort because it was never finished. At one point, I believe during the Civil War, a unit was moved into the fort and they had to requisition wood and other materials so they could build some temporary wooden barracks outside the fort for the soldiers to actually live in. What amazed us about it, though, is how complete it was and how it's in better condition than some of the other forts we've been to that were manned and maintained into the 1940s and 1960s. Part of that could be the fact that this fort has so many huge granite blocks that it is constructed out of. I don't think it's going anywhere for a while. I don't think it'll ever happen, but it would be cool for them to put on live demonstrations of the process needed to fire that cannon. I bet you even with a blank round it would be extremely loud. Some of the stuff we were reading, it was talking about like 140-pound actual missile fired from the cannon or round fired from the cannon, and they were using like 60, 80, or 100 pounds of black powder to shoot it like 8 miles. Just insane. Even back then, the capacity and just the size and the ferocity of what those cannons could do. There was some black soot and smoke marks in those ovens, so I think the ovens were used at one point. And these areas here that we're walking through, that you can tell the floors were never finished, these were supposed to be the barrack rooms for the enlisted men. The brickwork was something else. And these rooms on the side here were underground food storage rooms. The interesting part about it, again, because it was never finished, it doesn't look like there was ever a door frame or a door mounted on any of these. But the doorway itself out of the stone is in perfect condition. It was amazing to see how many cannon locations there would have been had this fort been completed and fully armed. I think it could have done a very good job of protecting the river if it was ever needed. Then we took off out of Portland, Maine, and enjoyed a day of lighthouse viewing. The first one we went to is the Portland Head Light. This was built during President George Washington's term of office as president. And in the notes, it was first refurbished in 1813. So that lighthouse has definitely been around for a while. out from that, though you can't see it, is the Ram Island Ledge Light. It was built in 1905. It's out on a small spit of island out in the middle of the water, and it's much smaller than the Portland Head Light. The whole coastline here is just gorgeous. Then on the recommendation of Finding Our Someday, we went to the Lobster Shack at Two Lights. Two Lights were two different lighthouses. First one was built in 1828. The other one shortly thereafter. One was a steady light and one was a blinking light. The idea was sailors could use them to get their location better. It was later determined by the lighthouse keepers that it was totally redundant and the second one wasn't needed. So it ended up going on to the private market and was purchased and is now a private home. Can you imagine having a house that's an old lighthouse? The shore here at the Lobster Shack was just amazing. The rocks look so much like an old petrified log. Just amazing. And then this cute, short, stubby little lighthouse called the Bug Light. It was built in 1855. It's considered the only one in the world to be shaped like a 4th century Greek monument. Interesting part about this is it's cast iron outside, but they built a brick wall inside for the lighthouse. And yes, it really is that short and stubby. And on the end of a pier that you can kind of see in the background is the Spring Point Ledge Lighthouse. It was built in 1897. I believe the pier is closed to public traffic, so we did not go out there. But it was still neat to see. All in all, 6 lighthouses in one day. That's a lot.